I got an ATAR of 98.2, and here's exactly how I studied for it. And no, I'm not born a genius. I just knew how to study smart, not hard. So I'm going to share those tips with you and help you excel any upcoming exam. Now, HSC is the final exams for high schools in Australia. I'm sure there's a similar one around the world. For every single subject, there was a syllabus, which is basically the Bible. It tells you exactly what topics are going to be assessed for the entire course. I want you to print this syllabus out for every single subject because you'll be referencing that and studying accordingly. In the New South Wales syllabus, every topic had dot points, and the dot points explained what could be assessed in that specific topic. And if there wasn't a dot point on a specific topic, it couldn't be assessed. So think of this as your guideline. Whenever we're learning topics in class, your teacher naturally wants to teach you that topic. They are so passionate about what they teach, and they will teach you to a level of detail that is not quite necessary to ace your exams. I know it sounds silly to say, but if it's not in the syllabus or it's not a specific dot point, don't waste your time learning that fully because it's not going to be assessed. So it really doesn't matter if your goal is to ace the exam. If you're genuinely curious and you want to learn, go for it. But keep in mind, you have to be smart with your time and you want to be studying efficiently. So if it's not in the syllabus, just leave it out. Now, a lot of the topics had really heavy textbooks because they'd cover the HSC content. And everyone would lug them around. Their backs would be sore, their arms would be sore. And I figured out a little hack that you don't need to do any of that, but you can still write all of your notes efficiently. So what I do is firstly try and get digital copies of textbooks where I could. That saves me the trouble of carrying things around. It's all on my laptop. If I couldn't, then I would just leave my textbook in my locker. I wouldn't be carrying it back and forth unless I absolutely needed to. Now, you probably do several subjects, I think up to 7 or 8. That's a lot of different topics. So instead of carrying thick textbooks for every single one, this is what I did, and you can completely steal this if you'd like. What I did was I had one master binder. In that binder, I had loose leaf papers, so lined sheets of paper. Then I had dividers for all the different subjects. Now, every day it would be an empty binder. It would be all fresh pages for all of my 5 subjects that I had. Usually have 5 periods in the day. For every single class, let's say for chemistry, whatever I'm learning, I would write down on that lined piece of paper the most succinct notes I could. So no fluff, literally just the formula and explaining what the formula is, or the topic and highlighting the important part of whatever that is. And again, always referring back to the syllabus and the dot points, only writing down what is relevant. So at the end of that 1 hour period, I had maybe 1 or 2 pages of succinct notes from what I've learned. Then when I got home after school, I've done my 5 periods in that day, and I've got sheets of paper for every single subject. Now at home, I had binders for every single subject. So I had a maths, a chemistry, a physics, and so on. The notes that I wrote that day would go into each of the folders accordingly. So by the end of the semester, I had already had my lined notes written succinctly for exam, already organized in all the different folders, which made studying super easy to do. I just pull out the binder and read through and highlight those notes. This meant I didn't have to do extra work preparing for exams. I already had those notes ready to go. It was just a matter of studying those notes and doing practice papers. It also meant I wasn't carrying books back and forth for no reason, and I always had my notes on me at home to study. There was nothing that was left in my locker at school, and I wish I had when I was studying at home. So it just made everything efficient, easy to do, and exam time less stressful. On the topic of exams, now the best way to prepare for an exam is to do practice papers. The questions you get on textbooks aren't quite the same as the questions you get in an exam. So you only really get to practice by doing the actual practice papers. If you're studying for your final exam, which is HSC, do HSC past papers. NESA has all of them online. You just download them. They're all free and they all come with answers as well. Start doing practice HSC papers rather than just doing any odd questions or trial papers. The thing about the HSC is the format of the questions are quite similar. The style of the questions is quite similar. And sometimes they even reuse exact same questions from previous years. So if you do a bunch of those papers, you'll get familiar with how it is. And when that final exam comes around, you've seen that paper so many times, it would be just like second nature for you to do the exam. Now, while you're doing practice papers, make sure it has answers. There is absolutely no point in doing a practice paper if you don't have the answers, because how do you know what you're doing is correct? So always make sure there's answers and mark your work after you finish. Then you know exactly what to improve on for next time. And of course, figure out what works for you. Whether you're a morning person or you're a late night owl, whatever works, figure it out and have a routine for yourself. For me, I tried to use all the downtime I had in school to finish up my notes and study so that when I got home later in the night, I could relax and chill. I don't see the point of studying 24/7 because it's not efficient that way. So I found the times that work for me, and I used some of the downtime I had in school. Instead of going out and playing, I would be finishing up my notes because that means nighttime I can relax. So figure out what works for you. Make sure you get enough sleep, because I don't know how people do overnighters before an exam. You need to sleep. Your brain cannot function at its full potential unless you get a good night's rest. Make sure you're prioritizing all of that, your exercise, your health, and figure out what works best for you. And that's really it. That's how I studied really efficiently for my HSC. Again, I wasn't born smart. I don't even remember what I actually learned, but I just knew how to learn smart more efficiently, and it helped me just focus on what I needed to do. And I cut out all the fluff that's unnecessary. Just focus on the syllabus, the content, and the practice papers, and that's really what took me to the finish line. If you're currently studying for any final exams, good luck, and I hope these tips were helpful. If they were, make sure you leave me a comment, a like, and subscribe to this channel.